my dear viewers, welcome back to my channel English Lit Simplified. In today's video lecture, we will be discussing the most intriguing and fascinating Gothic romance novel, Wuthering Heights, written by Emily Bronte. We will be knowing the different characters in the novel and their complex intertwined relationships. We will also be understanding the summary of the novel, its themes, and finally, analyze the novel critically. Before I get into the novel, I would like to make a humble request to please subscribe to my channel and also hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update. Now, without procrastinating further, let's get into this timeless literary work. Now, Wuthering Heights is a story of passionate, obsessive and destructive love between a wild and enigmatic Heathcliff and charming, beautiful, spirited Catherine Earnshaw. The novel was published in the year 1847 by Emily Bronte under the pseudonym of Alice Bell. The novel is renowned for its Gothic atmosphere, characterized by its isolated setting, supernatural elements, wild landscapes, and brooding intensity. Beyond the tempestuous romance, the novel delves into a myriad of themes such as passionate, obsessive, destructive love, the corrupting nature of revenge, social class and mobility, and finally the enduring power of the past, which has a tendency to destroy the generations. Due to its unique narrative style, unforgettable characters, and psychological depth, the novel is considered to be a literary masterpiece. Now, the novel spans across the two generations concerning the two families which reside on the west of Yorkshire moors. The two families are the Earnshaws and the Lintons. Now, the Earnshaws reside at a mansion called the Wuthering Heights, whereas the Lintons reside in a mansion called the Thrush Grange. There are too many characters and a lot of interconnections between them. It might lead to a lot of confusion. In order to avoid further confusion, we will be knowing the characters first and then get into the summary of the novel. Like I said, the novel spans across the two generations, the first generation and the second generation of two families, the Earnshaws and Lintons. We will be first looking at the characters of first generation of both the families. The first important characters here are Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw. Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw are the owners of the mansion Wuthering Heights. They have two biological children, Hindley Earnshaw and Catherine Earnshaw. Now, Catherine is the heroine and protagonist of the novel, who is beautiful and spirited. We also have Frances, who is Hindley's wife. Now, these are the characters of the first generation. Apart from Hindley and Catherine, Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw have an adopted son, Mr. Heathcliff, who is the protagonist, who is the hero as well as the villain in the novel. Now, Heathcliff is a dark-skinned orphan boy who was brought into the Wuthering household by Mr. Earnshaw. Now, those were the Earnshaw members of the first generation. Let us look at the Linton family members of the first generation. Mr. and Mrs. Linton are the owners of the mansion called the Thrush Grange. They have two children, Edgar Linton and a daughter, Isabella Linton. Now, these were the characters of both the families belonging to the first generation. Let us now look at the characters belonging to the next generation. The first character here in the second generation is of Hareton. Hareton is the son of Hindley and Frances. We then have Kathy or Catherine, who is the daughter of Catherine Earnshaw and Edgar Linton. Now, Kathy is very similar to her mother. She shares a striking resemblance with her mother. However, she also shares the politeness and kindness of her father, Edgar Linton. And finally, we have Linton, who is the son of Heathcliff and Isabella Linton. I hope you got a basic idea of all the characters and their complex interconnections with each other. Let us now get into understanding this beautiful, timeless masterpiece. Apart from the characters that we just discussed, there are two other characters who are the narrators of the novel. The first one being Mr. Lockwood, who is the present tenant at the Thrushcross Grange. And the other character is of Nellie Dean, who is the housekeeper of Mr. Lockwood at the Thrushcross Grange, and she's also a former servant at Wuthering Heights. She served Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw from a very young age, therefore she is a witness to the entire tragic saga. The novel opens in the year 1801, when Mr. Lockwood, who is the tenant at the Thrushcross Grange, decides to visit his landlord, Heathcliff, who stays at Wuthering Heights. Now, Heathcliff is a dark, unfriendly, reserved, wealthy man. When Mr. Lockwood visits Wuthering Heights to meet Heathcliff, Heathcliff doesn't welcome him. He gives him a cold shoulder. And there at Wuthering Heights, Mr. Lockwood witnesses Hareton, son of Hindley and Francis. And also he sees the young Catherine or Kathy. Now both of them look quite devastated and depressed. The atmosphere at Wuthering Heights was completely grim and depressive. As there was a lot of snow, Mr. Lockwood had to stay back at the Wuthering Heights. It's on the same night Mr. Lockwood has a nightmare of the old Catherine trying to get through the window. Shocked by the nightmare and the grim atmosphere at Wuthering Heights, he returns to the Thrushcross Grange and demands his housekeeper Nellie Dean to narrate the entire story about the Earnshaws and the Lintons. He was curious to know the reason behind the depressive nature of Heathcliff and also the other members present at Wuthering Heights. And as Nellie Dean narrates the story, he begins to write down the details in his diary. Nellie's narration starts about 30 years prior. She talks about 30 years prior when she was a child and was a maid at Wuthering Heights. As a young girl, she once witnesses old Mr. Earnshaw, who returns from a trip to Liverpool, and he brings a dark-skinned orphan boy whom he names Heathcliff. Now, Mr. Earnshaw showers Heathcliff with extreme love and affection, that his biological son Hindley starts to develop the feelings of hatred and jealous upon Heathcliff. Catherine, who initially disliked Heathcliff due to his rough and uncivilized mannerisms, gradually develops a deep attachment and bond. We get to see that the bond between Catherine and Heathcliff turns stronger and their affection turns into a passionate love affair. One day, as the two of them were discovering the wild landscapes of the moor, they decide to spy on the Thrushcross Grange, as they were curious to know about the Linton family members. As the two of them visit the Thrushcross Grange to spy on the Linton family members, Catherine is attacked and bitten by their dog. Therefore, the Linton members take Catherine in until she recovers and send Heathcliff back to Wuthering Heights. Catherine stays at the Thrushcross Grange for a period of 5 weeks. There she is exposed to the refined luxurious and sophisticated lifestyle of the Linton family members. She is attracted towards their wealth and their respectable social status. When she returns to Wuthering Heights after 5 weeks, she is transformed into a completely new lady, much to the dismay of Heathcliff. On the other hand, after the death of Mr. Earnshaw, Hindley, who was abroad, returns to Wuthering Heights, and this time he brings his wife, who is a frail woman named Frances. As he was the owner of Wuthering Heights, he starts treating Heathcliff in a cruelest manner. He reduces him to a status of a servant and denies him even the basic right of education. He abuses him mentally and physically. On the other hand, Catherine, who is attracted towards the Linton family household and their mannerisms, decides to get married to Edgar Linton, who was a wealthy and well-mannered man. Despite her all-consuming love towards Heathcliff, Catherine decides to get married to Edgar Linton so that she could lead a luxurious and respectable life and also help Heathcliff. One day she confesses about her decision of marrying to Edgar Linton with her maid Nellie Dean, and Heathcliff overhears their conversation. Catherine, in a conversation with Nellie Dean, says that she would never marry Heathcliff as he was low and dirty. Upon hearing this, Heathcliff is heartbroken and shattered. Completely devastated, Heathcliff leaves Wuthering Heights for many years. We then get to see that Catherine gets married to Edgar Linton and begins to reside at the Thrushcross Grange, leading a happy and content lifestyle. 3 years later, Heathcliff returns. This time, somehow he is mysteriously wealthy. He has come back with a burning desire for revenge. He wants to take a revenge from both the families, the Earnshaws and the Lintons, who have wronged him. And he sets about to systematically destroy the family members one after the other. His first target is Mr. Hindley. Now, Mr. Hindley's wife, Frances, had passed away after giving birth to their son, Hareton. Therefore, Hindley is now totally depressed and spends most of his time in gambling, and his life is full of debts. Therefore, Heathcliff takes an advantage of this situation. He lends Hindley with a lot of money, which Hindley decides to use it for gambling. It makes his life further miserable and full of debts. Due to extreme depression, loneliness, and a life full of debts, Hindley dies. Shortly after Hindley's death, Heathcliff inherits the mansion of Wuthering Heights. He also manipulates Isabella Linton, who is Edgar's sister, into marrying him, just to spite and mock Edgar Linton. He marries Isabella Linton not out of affection but only to treat her with a lot of cruelty. The marriage turns miserable. After suffering a lot in a horrible marriage with Heathcliff, Isabella escapes to London, where she gives birth to Heathcliff's sickly son, Linton. Shortly after giving birth to Heathcliff's sickly son, Isabella dies. On the other hand, Catherine is torn between her profound love towards Heathcliff and her loyalty towards her husband Edgar. Due to emotional strain, Catherine's health deteriorates. During a passionate, agonizing confrontation with Heathcliff, Catherine dies, leaving behind a daughter from Edgar. Heathcliff is completely shattered and heartbroken, and he begs Catherine's spirit to haunt him forever. Shortly after Catherine's death, Heathcliff decides to inherit the Thrushcross Grange after the death of Mr. Edgar. He therefore brings his sickly son Linton to the Thrushcross Grange, much to Edgar's reluctance, and he forces young Cathy to marry his sickly son Linton so that he could manipulate and take over the Thrushcross Grange. Much to young Cathy's reluctance, she marries the sick Linton. However, the marriage turns out to be abusive and horrible due to Linton's toxic behavior. We get to see that Mr. Edgar Linton dies, followed by the death of the sickly Linton. Young Cathy is now a widow and she's completely dependent and trapped at Wuthering Heights. On the other hand, Heathcliff brings in Hindley's son to the Wuthering Heights and begins to treat him cruelly, just the way his father, Mr. Hindley, had treated him earlier. Heathcliff denies education to Hayton. Therefore, Hayton was a reflection of Heathcliff's unhealed childhood trauma. Initially, we get to see that Cathy dislikes Hayton due to his uneducated, rough mannerisms. In an act of kindness, Cathy decides to teach Hayton to read, and in the process, she sees his inherent goodness, and the two of them develop a strong companionship. The strong companionship eventually turns into love. Heathcliff, on the other hand, notices the growing companionship and the profound bond between Cathy and Hayton, and their bond reminds him of his relationship with the old Catherine. Therefore, his desire for revenge begins to fade. Extremely heartbroken, devastated, and depressed, Heathcliff begins to have visions of Catherine's spirit. He loses interest in sleep, food, and he expresses his wish to be united with his beloved's spirit. We get to see that after a prolonged suffering, Heathcliff dies in Catherine's old room, and there is an expression of peace on his face. He is then buried next to his beloved Catherine's body. And finally, we get to see that Cathy marries Hayton, representing the triumph of love and understanding over hatred, revenge, and destructive love. It's a hope for their promising future. Shortly after their marriage, the couple inherits both the mansions, the Wuthering Heights as well as the Thrushcross Grange. Thus, we can say that Wuthering Heights is more than a romantic novel. It deals with the exploration of human nature, the consequences of unchecked passion, and also provides a hope for redemption despite a lot of suffering. Therefore, this emotional roller coaster continues to resonate with the readers even today. Well, that was all for today's video. I hope you understood this beautiful, timeless novel. We shall meet again with yet another topic. Until then, goodbye and stay tuned to English Lit Simplified.